When it comes to the NFL rumor mill, there is never a shortage of juicy stories and news reports to talk about. And in this one, we're going to be talking about the reports that are surrounding the Lions, of which they are absolutely unbelievable. We're going to talk about it in today's episode, folks, so stay tuned. It started with an owner who had a last name fans despised, hiring a coach that the experts thought was crazy.
But I got a plan, I swear to you.
Who traded for a QB that was said to be washed up. They said the Detroit Lions would never amount to anything, that it would always be the same old Lions. But this team, our team, has a new identity, defined and expressed by the crazy head coach.
Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes, I will beat your ass.
Led by the QB that nobody thought was good. Motor City Mania is in full swing and ready to start. So join the show and be prepared for kneecap biting, because Motor City Mania starts right now. Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM, Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and we're diving in right now. As always, to those that are tuning back into the show, I just want to say thank you all for coming back. Thank you all for your view, your support, your patronage. Thank you all for everything that you do. And for those that are newcomers to the show, I just want to say thank you all for giving my show a shot. Hopefully you guys enjoy the content, and hopefully I gain your subscription if I've earned and deserved it. And with that being said, to everybody, I just want to say God bless. I hope you enjoy the content, and let's dive into the show. So let's talk about this here, folks. When we're talking about the NFL, there is never any shortage of rumors. Absolutely never a shortage, because there's always some news story that comes out about this player being disgruntled, this player wanting out, potentially this coach is getting fired or hired, whatever the case might be. And again, it's kind of very interesting to see what kind of stories come out throughout the year. Obviously, before the trade deadline, it's all about who could potentially get traded away or traded for. When we start getting into the offseason, it's about, hey, who potentially could get drafted, who could potentially get signed, who could potentially get cut. All these are different things that get talked about throughout the course of the year, regardless of whatever situation you're in. But right now, we're kind of in that lull phase, if you will, between the trade deadline and the offseason, because the trade deadline just happened. So it's like the kind of stories that are coming out right now are a little bit more far-fetched, in my opinion, or a little bit more, okay, this is a little bit harder to swallow, so to speak. But when you start talking about the rumors that are going on right now, it's a different variety of news altogether when we're talking about the Detroit Lions, because rather talking about trades or cuts or anything like that, we're actually going to talk about coach and player retention, because what we're going to talk about is Jared Goff, and we're going to talk about Dan Campbell. And it's absolutely bizarre, the kind of conversation we're about to have here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the one that is a little bit more realistic, a little bit more plausible, and then we're going to end with the one that I think is absolutely bizarre, just absolutely unbelievable crazy. So let's get into it really quickly, because we got a bit to cover here. The first thing we're going to talk about is Jared Goff. Now, I'm not going to talk about Jared Goff in the normal sense here. What I'm going to be talking about is that the reports are starting to come out that Jared Goff's contract value, his value as a quarterback, has continued to rise, which obviously, if you've watched him play, if you've watched the Lions' performance, if you've watched how well they've been performing on offense, the factor 7-2, this should be no small wonder. If you start playing really well, if your team starts winning, chances are your value is going to go up, not only on the NFL market at large, but also towards the team you're playing on. And if you think about it, one of the biggest buzzwords, one of the biggest storylines that a lot of people have been following is whether or not the Lions are going to give Jared Goff a contract extension, which at this point is looking very, very likely. Now, here's the thing. The debate about Jared Goff's contract extension is not about the fact of whether or not he's going to get it. That has been pretty much largely settled. Most people have come to the conclusion that the Lions are going to extend Jared Goff at some point. Again, the Lions opened up contract extensions back in the offseason. They've kind of continued it kind of like on the sideline. Hasn't been a whole lot of development, but again, we know the Lions are interested in extending Jared Goff and keeping him around, not only by the fact that they've opened up contract negotiations, but also because of what Dan Campbell has said, what the teammates have said, what Brad Holmes has said. It's very plainly obvious the Lions want to retain Jared Goff's services much longer than what his current contract is. And again, when you think about it, Jared Goff has been producing at a top 10 level for the last 2 seasons. He's been in the top 10 statistically last year and already this year. And again, this offense is producing at the same level it did last year as a top 5 unit. Jared Goff is in complete command as both a leader and as a field general of this unit. It's no small wonder that the Lions would like to retain his services because, again, trying to find a top quality quarterback in the NFL is very, very difficult. And Jared Goff has proven that he's not only a good quarterback, but he can be a great quality quarterback that a lot of teams would very much envy to have. So for me, it's like, it's a no-brainer that the Lions want to retain his services. Now, again, like I said, the debate is not whether or not the Lions are actually going to extend him. The chances of that happening are very, very high. The debate now is rather how much the Lions are going to give him. And this is what I mean. The contesting of most people that want to argue about this is how many years, how much money in terms of cap value per year they're going to give to Jared Goff, what the total value of the contract is going to be, and finally, when. Like, how quickly are they going to try to extend Jared Goff? These are all points of contention depending upon who you talk to. Now, there's roughly, if I really wanted to call it, 2 groups that are arguing with this whole theory, or rather this whole debate about Jared Goff and his contract extension. Some Lions fans have argued that because Jared Goff has another year on his contract, the current one that he had back when he was the Rams, the Lions should wait potentially until next year to give that extension, which there is some merit to that argument, because it's like, listen, you already have him under contract for 1 more year. Why would you potentially give him more money when you have him on contract for another year? Why not just wait and see what happens? So there is some merit to that argument. However, though, a larger majority, including myself, believe that as Goff continues to play at such a high level, his price tag not only has increased, but it's going to continue to increase. And with it constantly getting larger and larger, the longer he remains unsigned to a contract extension, that is a problem for the Lions, because it's like, okay, we already know we're going to have a decent amount of cap space next year. We're looking at about $70 to $80 million in cap space. But it's like, the sooner you can sign Jared Goff, you actually are going to potentially save money, not only short-term and long-term, if you can get it done much more quickly. And I'm not necessarily saying right now. I'm saying at the earliest, the most likely chance this year would have probably been during the bye week. I said it could happen. It didn't happen, so now it's like, okay, we now need to wait until the season is over and we get into the off-season for a potential talking of whether or not contract extension talks are going to resume, how fruitful they are, and when eventually a contract extension is actually inked and put pen to paper. But the reason why we're talking about this right now is because a recent report came out from SpotRack, which pretty much said that Jared Goff's contract value has spiked. And when I mean it's spiked, it has gone drastically up in value. What do I mean by drastically gone up in value? Here's what I mean. If you think about it and you go back to this previous offseason when the contract talk extensions really started to heat up for not only Jared Goff but Jonah Jackson, the idea was that Jared Goff could be in line for a deal that was very similar to what Derek Carr and Daniel Jones got. If you all recall very correctly, Derek Carr, I believe, got a 4-year, $157 million deal, and Daniel Jones got a 4-year, $160 million deal, which roughly came up to about $40 million a year for both quarterbacks. I think Derek Carr got a little bit less at about 37.5. But either way, that was looking like the market value for Jared Goff in terms of total years, in terms of total value, and also in terms of average annual contract in terms of, per year. However, though, the recent market value report that's come out of SpotRack is that Goff's new contract is going to look something like 5 years, $210 million at $42 million in average a year, with a grand total of $168 million of that $210 million being fully guaranteed. If you're all doing the quick math, $168 million out of $210 million is 80% of the total contract is guaranteed. Now, this is where we're going to kind of speed up into this. If you realistically think about it, I know that there are some Lions fans, particularly those that are at Woodward, the heavyweights, that would balk at a contract of this amount because they're going to be like, dude, it's way too much money. You're putting way too much guaranteed money on Jared Goff. It's absolutely stupid to give him that much money. That's exactly what they're going to say. I know it for a fact because they've said it multiple times before, especially easy. Now, here's the one thing, though, I would say to keep in mind about this. Number one, if the Lions were to ink an extension, that deal in and of itself would not take effect until 2025 when his current contract is up in 2024. So you would have 2 years of difference between when the deal currently starts versus at the end of his current deal, which, think about this really quickly, folks. The cap space for every year for the NFL goes up by about $10 million. So in 2 years, in theory, it should go up by $20 million, which means by the time that new deal starts, it's actually not going to be as much of a bulky contract as some people would like to think, because there's going to be a 2-year grace period before that contract initially kicks in. So that's number one. But here's the other thing about this, number two. One of the biggest gripes that I've heard from people about Jared Goff getting a new deal is how much of the average salary cap per year is going to be used up in a contract for him. And that's talking about the percentage, that's talking about average annual cap. You know what I'm talking about here, the average amount of money he makes per year. Here's the thing though. If you take 210 and you divide it by 5, that's where I came up with that $42 million per year. Well, if you think about it, Daniel Jones got $40 million a year. So it's, again, very much still in the ballpark of the average per year of what Jared Goff would get in comparison to both Derek Carr and Daniel Jones. The only thing that's different is there's 1 extra year on the contract and there's an extra $50 million in total value. But think about this, folks. If you think about Jared Goff in comparison to both Derek Carr and Daniel Jones this year, just let me put these stats out there really quickly. Let's take a look at Derek Carr. If you take a look at Derek Carr this year with the New Orleans Saints, his first year with the team, he has thrown 220 completions to 334 attempts, which is for 65.9 completion percentage. That's 16th best in the NFL. He has 2,231 yards. That's 12th best in the NFL. He has a 6.7 average a throw. That's tied for 24th. He has 10 touchdowns, tied for 19th. He has 4 interceptions. He has a QBR rating of 50.7, which is 19th. And he has a passer rating of 89.8. which is 17th. So pretty much what you're looking at there is a mid-tier quarterback by those statistics. But then, take a look at Daniel Jones, the guy that actually got the slightly larger deal from the Giants. Take a look at his numbers for the year. He has only completed 108 passes out of 160 attempts for 67.5 completion percentage. That's actually top 10. But his yards, only 909 yards, which is dead last in the NFL. He only has 5.7 an average a throw, which is ranked 33rd out of 32 starting quarterbacks. So go figure that one. He has 2 touchdowns, which is ranked 36th, and he's actually not the leading touchdown thrower for his own team, even though he's the starting quarterback. He has 6 interceptions. His QBR rating is 37.8, which is ranked 27th in the league, and his passer rating is a 70.5, which is again ranked 33rd. So Daniel Jones got the large contract between him and Derek Carr, and yet Daniel Jones has absolutely been trashed this year. Now, I know some Giants fans that might watch this episode just on curiosity, or other people will see this and be like, well, David, Daniel Jones has been injured. That's regardless. That doesn't make a difference. The point of the matter is he got a $160 million deal, and he's done absolutely nothing with it when he has been healthy. Not to say of the fact that he's been getting injured left and right, which has been a problem for Daniel Jones in the past. So that's what Derek Carr and Daniel Jones have done with their new deals from their clubs. Take a look at what Jared Goff has done this year so far. He has completed 223 throws to 326 attempts, which is for 68.4 completion percentage rate. That is that is 9th best in the league, pardon me. He has 2,507 yards. That's 4th best in the league. He has 7.7 an average a throw, which is tied for 6th. He has 14 touchdowns, tied for 12th. He has 5 interceptions, a 66.3 QBR rating, that's 6th best, and he has a 99.1 passer rating. That's 9th best. So what am I doing with those statistics? I'm pretty much pointing this out here. Derek Carr is a mid-quarterback right now. Daniel Jones is literally a dumpster fire, and Jared Goff is easily a top 10 quarterback. So when you start talking about the comparative value here, I think it's more than feasible. I'm not going to say definitely going to happen, but it's more than feasible to say that Jared Goff could get a 5-year, $200-some-odd million contract. Now, here's what I am going to say about this. A contract of that amount is going to pose a couple of problems. And here's the reason why it's going to pose a couple of problems. The major problem, the major question is, what about Hendon Hooker? The Lions drafted Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round, right? He's supposed to be a developmental quarterback who could potentially take over as the starter in the future. Well, here's the problem. If you sign Jared Goff to a 5-year, $210 million contract, you can kiss that goodbye. There's no way Hendon Hooker's ever going to see the field. Here's the reason why. Jared Goff right now is 29 years old. If you add 5 more years on top of the current deal that he has, he is not going to leave the Lions until he's 35, 36 years old. Oh, by the way, that would mean that in 6 years, potentially, Hendon Hooker would start, which would mean by the time Hendon Hooker would see the field, he'd be 30, 31 years old. That's a problem because to me, it's like, why would you draft a quarterback in the 3rd round if you're not even going to start him until he's in his early 30s? By that time, you've wasted any time to potentially use him. So, here's what I'm honestly going to say is going to be more likely to happen if the Lions do sign Jared Goff to a contract extension, which is exactly what I've said from day one. I have said that the Lions, if they sign Jared Goff to a contract extension, which I fully believe they will, it will be a 3 to 4 year deal, probably around that $160 to $180 million contract. Because one, it's not as long in terms of years, which means you could still potentially, in theory, have Hendon Hooker start in his late 20s at the time when he's able to bring in his prime stats. So there's that. But at the same time, you're still in about that $40 to $45 million a year ballpark, which is what a lot of people think Jared Goff's average annual worth truly is. So that's my personal opinion on this whole matter. Now, that's the first rumor. That's the first report that's about the Lions that I think was like, what are you saying? But here's the one that really gets to me. Because if you think about it, like I said, I fully expect that the Lions are going to re-sign, extend Jared Goff, and that's because of what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have said. But this next rumor, which is about Dan Campbell, is absolutely ridiculous. And here's the reason why it's ridiculous. The report is that from The Athletic, there's this guy called Bruce Feldman, and he states that he thinks that he's heard reports that Dan Campbell could, and I put heavy emphasis on that word, could be a dark horse candidate for the recently opened Texas A&M football program's head coaching position. And here's the reason why. The reason why is because, if I recall correctly, is that Dan Campbell is a Texas A&M graduate. Plus, on top of that, if the freaking Texas A&M program could get Dan Campbell, that would be a huge draw, a huge boon to the program. But I'm going to be honest with y'all. This to me just sounds like pure fabrication. It sounds like pure fantasy. It does not sound like there is any chance of this happening. To me, it sounds like total bullcrap, and it sounds like pure clickbait for this guy, whoever wrote this article, to try and get, people to click on his article to get activity on the website. Because to me, there's just simply no way that this is going to happen. And I'm going to tell you why. Number one, Campbell has stated before, when he first got hired in his opening presser, that he wanted the Detroit Lions head coaching job, and he said he wanted it bad. Why in the thunder would he all of a sudden, 3 years into his tenure with the Lions, all of a sudden quit that job and then go to a college program? That to me just doesn't make any sense. If you wanted the job as bad as you said you did, it makes no sense to all of a sudden, once the program starts working, just all of a sudden quit and go down to Texas. That to me makes no damn sense, number one. Number two, think about this. Detroit was actually the very first team that hired him to be a head coach. Yes, I know he was an interim head coach with the Miami Dolphins for a couple of games, but the Lions actually hired him to be the head coach. I'm sorry, given the fact that it's so hard to get head coaching jobs in the NFL, that is not something you walk away from to go play in the college ranks and coach in the college ranks. That's just not something you do. So that's number two. Number three. We have to understand something here. We have to understand the history of the Detroit Lions and how much Dan Campbell understands that history, not only in terms of the city and the automotive industry and the bailouts and the freaking bankruptcies, also in terms of the fact that the Lions, back when he was playing for them, they were not really good. He was part of that 0-16 team. And then again, you consider all of the history that Dan Campbell is a part of and knows of with the freaking Detroit Lions and the city of Detroit. Why in the thunder would he want to leave a successful program that's now actually starting to pick up steam, that's at 7-2, has a likely shot to go deep into the playoffs if we can figure a couple of things out, and at the same time is most likely going to win its first division title since 1993? Why would he all of a sudden leave that? Again, that makes no damn sense to me. That to me is just pure idiocy. And then, let's go to number 4 here. We have to understand the man himself. We have to understand who Dan Campbell is. Dan Campbell is extremely, and I mean this, he is emphatically loyal to the players and to the organization of Detroit. Again, he played for the city of Detroit. He's now coaching for the city of Detroit. I find it very hard to believe that all of a sudden he's just going to drop that after everything that's happened, after all of the hard work, all the struggles he had to go through in his first year and a half, to just say, oh yeah, I'm going to leave that behind. I'm going to leave behind these players who have busted their butts for me, that have given me everything that they have, to now go down to the college ranks to deal with college players. That to me is just the sheer opposite, the sheer antithesis of who Dan Campbell is. It speaks it just doesn't make any sense. There's no other way to put it. And then finally, we have to think about this from a perspective of prestige, and we have to think about this in terms of a career move. No head coach in the NFL, save maybe Bobby Petrino with the Atlanta Falcons in 2008-2009, when he quit his job with the Falcons to go and be a head coach for the college league, just leaves to go to the college ranks. It just does not happen. And the reason why is because typically it's typically viewed as a drop down in terms of prestige, and it's typically also viewed as a drop down or a demotion, if you will, to go from the pro ranks all the way down to the college ranks if you're a head coach. Now, if you're a defensive coordinator, an offensive coordinator, and you get a head coaching job, that is still considered a promotion because now you're getting the chance to run the show. But for an NFL head coach to all of a sudden leave an NFL head coaching job to go become a head coach at a college program, that's a demotion. That's a drop in prestige, and that's definitely going to cause some eyebrows to pop. But I will say this, the one boon, the one real bonus that you would have if you were to go to be a head coach at a college program would be the fact that the head coach has much more control over a roster when it comes to scholarships, when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to actually being able to say, yes, this is the player that I really want. Because again, you're not necessarily handing out contracts, you're handing out scholarships. That's a completely different animal than what the NFL does. But the problem is that you're dealing with young kids that are still kind of learning the game. When you get to the NFL, you're kind of expected to already know your craft, or at least if you're a rookie, hone your craft for a couple of years before you become a true consummate professional. So again, it's a completely different animal here. But again, I just don't think Dan Campbell is going to do that, because why would he leave a successful program with the Detroit Lions to all of a sudden go to a program that's kind of searching for itself with the Texas A&M Aggies? That to me just doesn't make any sense. Why would he leave a program that's actually on the right track, that has an identity that he has built from the ground up, to go to a program that doesn't have an identity and is trying to find one? That to me just doesn't make any sense. And again, this whole rumor, this whole idea that Dan Campbell could potentially leave the Lions in the offseason for a college program, I consider it nothing more than bunk. I consider it nothing more than somebody who was bored and decided to come up with something just so that way he can say, oh, I have a successful article that I wrote because, hey, I'm looking for something to kind of fill the airwaves right now. So again, I hold no stock, I hold no truth, I hold no weight in this rumor that Dan Campbell could potentially be a dark horse candidate for the Texas A&M head coaching job position for their football program. That to me is just pure sheer lunacy. But that's what I wanted to talk about today, because right now it's kind of a bit of a lull period. We just got done with the win against the Chargers. We're going to start ramping up talking about the Bears here in the next couple of days. But I really wanted to talk about this because this was something that kind of came out late Sunday, early Monday morning. And I was like, okay, I really need to talk about the Jared Goff contract situation, and I really need to talk about Dan Campbell here. So I figured I'd talk about this really quickly, kind of get it out of the way before we start talking about the Bears. But I'd like to hear what you guys' thoughts are on both of these situations. And with that, I just want to say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode that's coming at the end of this one. I also encourage y'all, please, make sure you also do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I also encourage y'all, please, to do this. If you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you've not had a chance to do so, again, I'm going to very, very heavily emphasize this. Please, please subscribe if I've earned your subscription. But I also want to encourage y'all, after you subscribe, make sure you turn on that bell notification icon to go along with it, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. Again, subscription numbers are always going up, but we want to make sure we turn on that bell notification icon, so that way when I push something out, you never miss it and you're always up to date with what I have to provide. I also encourage y'all, please, share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it everywhere and anywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. Again, it helps me out. Pardon me. And with that, I just want to say thank you all for tuning into the show. Thank you all for your view, your support, your patronage. Hopefully I gained your subscription if I hadn't done so already. And with that, I just want to say God bless, Hopefully you enjoyed the content, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.